What's up, boys? It's Taylor and Taylor for the Empirical Scouting Podcast, and I'm happy to say that we are finally back. You know, life happens, and I can confidently say that both of us, mainly you, have some big life events that have happened since the NFL draft, and we don't need to necessarily get into it. It's a little bit personal in that situation, but we are here for one thing and one thing only, and that's football. We are recording this episode late on Friday night. I believe Stanford Syracuse is at the 4-minute mark in the third quarter, and Illinois and Nebraska is at halftime. So anything that happens after that, it's not going to be included in this podcast. So do not hold us accountable if anything changes from now to the time you're listening to this. So Taylor, it's been a minute, and let's start out with talking about like the state of the NFL quarterback. Seems like across the board that QB play is pretty down compared to recent seasons. You have all this talk, especially you were talking about it earlier about the two high safeties and like it's a brand new concept or like should it be banned? And it's very stupid. But also the possible return of the actual run game in the NFL. Running backs are starting to get more and more carries and more touches, and we're seeing them a little bit more relevant, especially with fantasy football. So, what's your take on the overall state of the NFL quarterback?
I think the state of the NFL quarterback is it feels like a bad spot, but it feels like it's a bad spot because of the amount of, honestly, like at this point, I'm willing to say Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks that have exited the game in unison pretty much. I think we're all pretty we're all in agreement that Roethlisberger, Breeze, Manning, Brady, they're all Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Some people feel strongly that Eli Manning and Matt Ryan and Phillip Rivers aren't. That's a case by case situation. But there's arguments made they are as well. That is a lot of starting quarterbacks that all left the game at very like back to back, and that they're all guys that played at a very high level. And then you can throw in guys that kind of played at a high level and fell off. So Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Andy Dalton had a couple stretch. I'm not saying Andy Dalton's at all, but like he had a few years there in Cincinnati where he was, in MVP conversations for a while. Carson Wentz, he was. Carson Wentz had a near MVP season and fell off. And that kind of stuff is just the nature of the beast with the NFL. But really, like the main focus is the group of guys before those. There's a lot of great quarterbacks that we might have taken for granted left the game all at once. And, they all kind of benefited from an evolution of the game with the rules and new schemes and everything like that, to where the passing game became so dominant and defenses were in catch-up mode. And now we're kind of in that downhill part of it where defenses have caught up. There's schemes that have been developed, coverages that have been developed, alignments that have been developed to kind of hide your coverage, to confuse quarterbacks, and it makes it a lot more difficult. And these young guys are coming in, and these young guys are playing, the NFL borrows from college football, but it's still a different game almost. These guys are playing a different game at the college level, and it's very clear, like, you see like Tennessee's offense or TCU's offense. It's a different kind of offense. Even going back to like RG3 at Baylor, like in like, the issues Corey Coleman and all those Baylor wide receivers had coming in, the offensive systems are different, everything like that. And these guys are coming in and they're getting kind of shell-shocked almost by how much the learning curve is.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And to piggyback off that, I'll throw you a little curveball here. I wanted to bring up one quarterback, and it's not the quarterback we talked about before we started the show, but it's Caleb Williams. Now, it's only been 2 games, so don't want to say too much about him, but everyone thought he was the second coming. He was the greatest prospect since Andrew Luck, and he was looked at to just walk in and be a consistent 250 to 300 yard passer every single game, 2 touchdowns. Make his amazing plays. But like you said, he's getting a little shell shocked. His offensive line isn't great, especially that last game against Houston. I felt bad for him because anytime he would get the ball, it seemed like someone was getting closing in on him quick, and he had to make quick decisions. And he tried to make his Caleb Williams plays back at USC and at Oklahoma, but we saw one of those result in an interception. It's like you're not going to be able to do that as consistently in the NFL. These DBs aren't going to mess up. So, are you concerned at all with Caleb Williams? It sounds so crazy to say after 2 games, but has anything changed in your mindset after seeing him play in the
NFL? It's really hard to say yes or no to that question, and I know that's such a hedge. I personally was not as big on Caleb Williams as so many people were, and
that's also important to note because you weren't. He was definitely your top.
He was my top quarterback,
but
and I thought,
you weren't on the Andrew Luck train, and one of the top quarterbacks to ever come out.
Yeah, like I don't think I even had him rated higher than what I had some of the other quarterbacks like in recent memory. But this was what I had written up about him at the time, going into the draft. And I think there a lot of each of it is still very applicable to how he's playing the game. And he's getting better at it. Like he's already showing improvement week to week in just the 2 weeks we've seen him. But, we're still seeing those backyard tendencies. We're still seeing him hold the ball a little bit too long at times. And, the big problem I had with him in college was the system he was in didn't have timing-based reads or anything like that. It was just, option routes and everything like that. And he didn't have to play a pro scheme. Lincoln Riley's scheme is not a pro scheme. Like there's elements to it, but it's not. And, I think I do have an underlying concern that he's not going to live up to the hype. But truth be told, anything short of being a all-pro quarterback, was he ever going to live up to the hype?
No,
and it's the same thing with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, it's an unfair situation for Caleb Williams because unless he becomes an MVP type quarterback and leads the Bears to the promised land, like he's going to be looked at as a semi-bust, and bust is a hard word to say for that. But when you compare it to the hype that he got, like he was the savior. And we're going to transition a little bit to the person that we did talk about before they started the show, because he was supposed to do the same thing for this other franchise. But we'll go ahead and hit on the Bryce Young saga. I mean, you're David Tepper, Dan Morgan. You just traded the house, the literal house.
Morgan didn't.
Yeah. Okay, well, he didn't. You're right. But David Tepper did. And he was in control of that. And you see that they traded so much, that the graphic comes up on Twitter all the time. You see, the long list that the Bears got, and then the one player that the Panthers got, and that's going to be Bryce Young. But here we are, less than 20 games. I think it's 18 games to be exact, into his career. Now he's benched. I believe he was benched last year for 1 game as well because they wanted to get Andy Dalton just 1 game and let Bryce Young take like a breather, and then they threw.
I think the official story of it though is he was hurt, but I don't know if it's ever been, said.
I mean, you're not gonna be able to convince me that they didn't just bench him for a game to try to get like his, mentality back and give him like basically an extra week of rest. But that's just my opinion. But we're bringing in Andy Dalton, like we mentioned earlier, and he's closing in on 40. I think he's like 36, 37.
37. He's turning 37 soon.
Yeah, he's clearly over the hill. Now, I will say to give the Carolina Panthers a position to win, it's probably the right move. But if you're the Panthers, you necessarily want that. But then you're also hurting the mentality of Bryce Young. We've already seen all the clips and images this week come out talking about how, he was surprised about it and he's not taking it very happy. He's going to do the right thing, but he's just not very happy about the move. So make it make sense to me. What are your thoughts on this whole situation? Because it's very odd.
It's a rare situation where benching a number 1 pick so early is actually the right call, but it's complete. Bryce Young his career's gotten screwed over pretty much. And I'm putting up the report I wrote for Bryce going into the draft season, a couple years ago. And I'm just going to leave it and I'll hit on it in a second, and let, you and others read it as I talk. Going into the draft, we knew Bryce was small and we knew that he didn't have the biggest arm. We knew he had issues with that kind of stuff. But he had a killer mentality. He was very smart, made great decisions, and was very consistent with his, with his mechanics in a good way. He was just, he was a leader at Bama. He was calm under pressure. He was, he had, I don't want to compare him to Drew Brees. I never compared him to Drew Brees, but like he had like a Drew Brees-esque type feel to him, where not the most physically imposing and not the biggest arm, but had, everything else and could kind of compensate. Now you go to Carolina. In this first year that he's in Carolina, he's got a staff. He's got a poor offensive line. He gets pressured. I looked it up. He was in the top 10 of pressures last year, while only roughly he was middle of the pack in terms of pressures he caused himself. Meaning his offensive line was not very good last year. But he didn't play well when he was pressured. But how many rookies really are going to play well when they're under pressure as a quarterback? And then his staff gets fired midseason, and he gets a new coordinator and a new head coach going into his second year. Doesn't play in any preseason, and immediately gets benched 2 weeks in. Yes, the offensive line's improved. Like we get it. They were playing better. He was causing his own pressure and his own problems with that. He's missing reads. He's missing throws. The kid's confidence, though, is clearly just shattered.
Very much.
Like, well, yeah, it's there's no question about it. The throws he's making, the things he's doing, these little jump throws, it's not who he was at Alabama. And I did not have him as a QB1 in that draft. I never faulted anyone that did have him as QB1 in that draft, and I still will not fault anyone for that. I don't think that was a poor decision. I don't think that was poor scouting necessarily. Now, is there lessons to be learned from it? For sure. But I just think, 3 coordinators or something like that, and multiple offensive systems and poor offensive line his first year, kind of giving him happy feet.
No weapons.
No weapons, really. And yes, weapons. There's better weapons now, but it's like he's already broken.
Oh yeah.
Is already gone.
I mean, last year.
Yeah. There's no there's no salvaging this anymore. Maybe down the road, maybe he can be a great backup. Maybe he can get another starting spot down the road somewhere else, like Baker or something like that. But there's no salvaging this situation in Carolina for him. And so it's the right decision, but it sucks because it's happening to a kid that doesn't deserve it. And he's gotten screwed over by stuff beyond his control, it feels like.
Yeah. He is at a crossroads his career. And he's staring at it, and, he needs to get out of Carolina either way. You're not going to succeed there anymore. They're basically calling it quits. They need to go ahead and trade him for, whatever they can. We've seen worse quarterbacks traded for a second-round pick. So if they can get a second-round pick for Restaurant right now, I mean, you're taking an L on the draft. But I know that's the issue.
I think if they trade him now or in the offseason, you're seeing him traded for like a Zach Wilson like pick swap in the late round.
No, I agree with that as well. I was going to say, because it can either be like when Sam Darnold traded for like a second and a third or something like that. Obviously, the Josh Rosen trade. So we've seen that worse quarterbacks traded for even more than that. So I don't know if he's as quote unquote bad as Zach Wilson necessarily, but that's the opinion of the league. But I do think he needs to get out of there. Then he's at a crossroads. It's what are you going to do after that? Are you going to go down the Josh Rosen path? He's not the same mentality as Josh Rosen, but it could easily happen where you get one more start or you get one more opportunity to be a starting quarterback. That fails, and you're basically done. You're not even a backup anymore. Or are you going to take the Baker Mayfield path and learn under other quarterbacks? You might have to jump to another team or two. I mean, we saw Baker in Carolina, then we saw Baker in Los Angeles. And then he went to Tampa Bay, and he wasn't even given the job. He earned it. And now we see what he's doing now. So he basically just has to start working. He has to accept that he's not going to be that number one overall quarterback that drafted anymore. And he's just going to have to accept the role that he is stepping into. Because, like you said, he's basically now a backup quarterback in the league. And he has to earn the right to be able to get a starting opportunity somewhere. And it's probably not going to be on the greatest team again. So you're not going to walk into a great opportunity. And you just have to be able to be willing to work for that.
I will hit on why I think this a little bit more later on, but I don't think he's going to get another opportunity as a starter, truthfully. I think there's just, a lot of people waiting in the wings that will take priority over him for various reasons.
There are.
But what I will say is I think I don't be shocked if we see him as a very hot offensive coordinator candidate, in 20 years.
I was about to say that in 10 years, within 10 years, offensive.
Maybe 10 years, maybe 10 years-ish. Maybe he's like McVay didn't make the pros, obviously, the same way like as Bryce, but like maybe he ends up being a McVay, Robinson, D'Amico type or whatever. I know D'Amico's a defensive guy, but like, I think this guy is. I think this guy is a head coach. He's going to be a coach. I can't imagine him not being a coach and being a good one at that.
So we can confidently say future head coach of Alabama Crimson Tide, Bryce Young. But no, we'll transition over to the segment we want to spend the most time on today about. That's going to be the 2025 NFL Draft. We're both extremely early into our rankings, so we're not going to necessarily rank any of these guys. Just kind of discuss and give our thoughts and opinions through 1 to 2 years of starting and early into this season. But I do believe obviously people are going to be a little bit different, but I do believe there is a consensus top 3 quarterbacks that everyone's pretty much ranking 1, 2, and 3. That's going to be Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, and Quinn Ewers. Not necessarily 1, 2, 3 in that order, but we've seen them all mixed around. I do think the rise of Quinn Ewers through the first 2 weeks of the season has pretty much elevated him above anyone else, possibly. But we're going to go ahead and start with my man, the quarterback from my favorite team, Carson Beck. So far, Carson Beck and Georgia Bulldogs are 3-0, including a win over Clemson and that shaky win over Kentucky that we're not going to talk about. He currently has a 68.3 completion percentage with 680 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. I don't care what any Kentucky fans say that was not an interception. He did add 11 rushes on the ground for 55 yards. So Carson, as a dog fan, I can even admit I'm not going to be too.
Wait, that was definitely an interception, my guy.
No, that wasn't.
It may not have counted in the box score. That was definitely an interception, my guy.
We're not going to talk about it. You can debate them all. That wasn't an interception. But even I can admit, as a Dogs fan, he has not looked the same this year as he did last year. Now, I'm not necessarily sure why we have any changes on the offensive coordinator side. Obviously, losing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey definitely hurts. Yeah, so I understand the weapons aren't necessarily there as much, but he just does not look the same. So I'm just going to give you the floor to discuss Beck right now because as somewhat biased, but I don't want to be too mean, but also I don't want to be too biased as well. So I'll have to give you the floor for Carson Beck.
Yeah, so I mean, truthfully, starting out, this is going to be an overall arch and statement for all of this quarterback class for the most part. One of the main lessons we can learn from Bryce Young with scouting is what is your elite trait? What is the one thing you're going to hang your hat on as a prospect that when push comes to shove, you have that nobody else can beat? And Anthony Richardson's was generational athleticism. CJ Stroud was, he was that blend between being a great athlete while being very cerebral.
Well, we were able to see it, of course. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we were calling for that all year
yeah.
long. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I told you. That's why he was my QB1, because once I saw that, I was like, I know he can do it, but I need to see it. And he did it against us, and I was like, yeah, I mean, he's my QB1. If he plays like that, he's QB1.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Will Levis is that guy or anything, but like Will Levis is as a prospect is his arm strength.
Yeah.
Mahomes as a quarterback, his arm strength. Kyler Murray,
Lamar, his speed.
Lamar, his athleticism. Kyler Murray, his athleticism. Stafford, his arm strength.
Josh
Manning,
Allen.
Josh Allen.
Well, he had a couple things.
Yeah, his arm strength though is elite. Peyton Manning, nobody's smarter than him. He sees the game in slow motion. Same with Brady almost. And Bryce, we all kind of wanted that cerebral Manning, Brady, like mind to thing to be his trait. I don't think you can really count on that from a college quarterback at all. Like Manning was a good athlete and good arm and everything like that for the position when he came out. Brady's an outlier in terms of athleticism and all that kind of stuff.
Those are also different times in the game.
Yes.
Different eras. Yes. It's hard to compare how they would have done now in college.
Yes. So the thing with, the lesson with Bryce is he didn't really have, and he's small. He had a below average arm strength, and he's a mid-tier athlete at his size. Kyler's at least great athlete, even though he's small. I mean, Kyler's stocky. So what's your elite trait? Carson Beck, I like him a lot as a prospect. I really do, actually. Like, I think he's got a lot of good things about him, but what's his elite trait right now? And the guy that, like, when I watch Carson Beck, that I see is one of my favorite players of all time. I see Matt Ryan. And Matt Ryan, I genuinely think is a Hall of Fame quarterback. But now, like, if Matt Ryan came out now, is Matt Ryan, like, the same quality of player as he was when he came out originally? Like, in this modern game, like, now?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not. I mean, being a kind of semi-statue, obviously he wasn't as statuesque as he was.
Yeah, he was a little bit more nimble when he was a rookie and such. And Carson Beck's not, a statue. He can move, but he's not the most mobile quarterback. So, I mean, and applying it to all of them, what is the elite trait? What trait, like Carson Beck, is he a guy that you can draft and probably start and have moderate success with? Yeah, but are you drafting Carson Beck and expecting him to ever get into the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, ranking wise? Do you think you'll ever consider Carson Beck a top 5 quarterback in the league?
I don't think I can just walk into the league on any team. Now it just also depends where he lands. I do think, to me, Carson Beck's an extremely high floor guy, where if you want to be safe with your pick, you're going to pick him as your quarterback. And he'll be your quarterback for the next 7 to 10 years possibly. But there'll always be that one thing where you're like, I mean, I hate to say it with Matt Ryan because I thought he was, a top 5 quarterback for a long time, but like, you're always wanting a touch more. Like, you just want that little bit more. I think Carson Beck, like you said, could be that guy where it's like, we like him. We got to pay him. We want him. He wins us games. He gives us a chance, but I want just something a little bit more out of him. And he just never seems to get that extra step. I mean, obviously with Matt Ryan, we saw that year, 2018, 2016, I'm getting confused. But, the Super Bowl MVP year, like, we saw it. He gave it to us one year, that extra step.
He was also in what may be a top 3 offense of all time.
Exactly.
In that, and immediately, like, he replicated the success to a degree the next year. Like, numbers wise, individually, he was just as great. The team itself, though, wasn't as good anymore. And we took the step back. But yes, even Matt Ryan is a top 3 player all time for me and my favorite players. But yes, unfortunately, that is. And I hate it for him because I know it sucks for him too. But yeah, that's the story of his career.
Exactly. So it's like
he was an inch away from at all times of being elite.
Exactly. He could have been that next tier up with right under the Tom Brady's and Peyton Manning's, that next tier underneath it. Like even like the
That's
Big Ben
unfortunately
type
the
thing.
way he always was. He was right below. He was always in that 5 to 8 range, never in that top 4.
And that's something I see Carson Beck, and that's a great thing to have. Like that's a quarterback you want on your team. It just might not be exactly what you want as like a top 5 pick in the NFL draft potentially. And obviously, it's better than a bust, but it's just it's that safer pick with the 4. It's kind of like not taking Anthony Richardson to swing for the fences, but it's being like, okay, I want a guy I can plug and play. I can build a team around him. So what I was getting at was like a team like Carolina right now. Until I see it, I don't know if he'd have great success there. He'll bring the floor of that team up, but it'd be like a 8-win team, 9-win team, occasionally hit the 10, maybe 7, 6 wins, like like that middling tier, that area where you don't want to be at, where you sit there in the middle.
I'll tell you later
every
what
year.
I think Carolina should do, but
okay, we'll hit on that.
Yeah,
but, I mean,
Carson's the same thing. Yes.
Then you see, like, I mean, I'm just looking at teams that are currently at the higher end of the draft or projected to be in. Like, then I look at the Giants, and I'm like, that is kind of like a mess over there. But yeah, they screwed themselves over. But however, like, they do have Malik Neighbors, and if they can bring in some offensive line help, Devin Singletary's okay, but he's nothing special. But they'll need a little bit more weapons. But you have Malik Neighbors, and we know how much we love Malik Neighbors. Like, if you can get Carson Beck to the quarterback for Malik Neighbors, now you're starting to build something for a little bit for long term, and that could be something special. The other possibility, and it's gonna be funny because there's already 2 of them there, but it'd be the Los Angeles Rams. If you plug him in that system and with those wide receivers, even though Cooper Kupp's soon probably on his way out, he's getting injured after injury, his age is getting up there. But with Puka, just Sean McVay in general, go ahead.
Are you saying it's funny because Stetson's there? Like, Stetson's a non-factor at this point.
I know. I'm just saying it's funny because you have Stetson.
He was truthfully, he was always a non-factor.
I know, but I'm just saying it'd be three Georgia quarterbacks there. It'd be just kind of funny. Let's figure it out. But I'm just saying teams like that. I think he could have a chance to be, kind of like how Stafford led. Kind of how Stafford led the Rams to a Super Bowl, or like Goff almost led the Lions this year. Like, he's such a high floor guy that I think he could win a Super Bowl. Now, it's never just going to be on him, though. Like, he's not going to be the guy leading the charge no matter who's on the field with him. And that's the only issue with Carson Beck, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the issue, though, with Ewers, too, to me. I mean, I think there's a couple of advantages Ewers is going to have to Carson Beck. His age, he's got probably a little bit stronger of an arm. But he's skinnier. He's had more health issues. He's not been as consistent. And, the thing with Ewers is going to be like his trait is going to be his arm strength as well. But if we're being honest, I don't think Ewers would. I don't even know if I could say he would have a top 10 arm on a good day in the NFL right now for starting quarterbacks. That's being very generous, and that was being very generous too, because like just off the top of my head, like Mahomes, Richardson, Allen, Rodgers, Kyler, Stafford, Joe Milton. Penix is got a stronger arm.
Stafford still have a stronger arm? I don't know.
Stafford still has a stronger arm.
I was gonna say it's got to be close, but yeah.
Yeah, we're at 7 without really going too deep into it. So it's like, what is Ewers gonna do so much better than anyone else that when things are going bad, he's not, gonna be, broken confidence-wise. Like Quinn played great against Michigan. He's shown so much improvements. He's doing subtle things. He's manipulating defenders with his feet and his eyes and his body, and it's great. And Texas looks awesome, but what does he do?
Yeah,
better.
I can see that. And just to touch on Quinn Ewers' stats right now, he's with Texas, obviously 3-0, coming off of a college football playoff appearance, and obviously the dismantlement that you talked about in Michigan at the Big House. But 73.4 completion percentage. So that's, he's completing passes at a high level. 691 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. My thing with Quinn, I definitely see that. However, the ball noticeably jumps out of his hand, so I do give that little tick to arm strength. He also has, and it's not like a trait necessarily, but he does have that like gunslinger mentality. Like he will try to rocket the ball where he needs to go. Now he's not just sitting out, throwing the ball wherever he wants to at all times. Like he will check down, he will throw the ball away. However, I think he knows his arm strength, and I just love like he's willing to throw at different angles. With he'll sit there like a shortstop, throwing from 3/4, sidearm, over the top if he needs to, and just he's manipulating the defense in front of him. So that's something I do love, and something that you slowly see develop. And the other thing, and it's not really another tangible trait, but he walked into the big house. Obviously, Michigan's down, but it's still great atmosphere. They're the reigning national champs, and he just dismantled them this right away from the jump. I think I was driving to my baseball game, and like it was already like 14-0, and I was like, "There's not even a point to look at this game." And then obviously last year he walked into Tuscaloosa, beat them. And the year before that, what happened? He probably should have beat Alabama at home if he didn't get hurt. We'll never know. But he got hurt, and he was looking really good to take down Alabama. So in the biggest moments, he's looked good. Now, I don't remember the college football playoff game that they lost, how well he played. You'll have to jog my memory on that because I don't 100% remember that game. I don't think he played
well.
That. Yeah,
he played well.
Sure,
Texas didn't play bad.
Sure like I'm trying to remember that game, and I'm not remembering anything bad for that. So like in the biggest games that he's played well. It's the other games that have brought the question marks to us, and that's worrisome in itself.
They lost that game 37-31, and he went 24 for 43, 318 yards and a touchdown. He didn't have any turnover-worthy throws, and he had 3 big-time throws. So, I mean, he played pretty well, actually, in that game. Now, talking about his completion percentage, it's great that he's doing that. He's doing it in some good ways, too. Like, he's doing well at throwing over the middle and everything like that. The slight concern, though, is he's got 30% of his passes right now are behind the line of scrimmage. And then, 70% of his passes pretty much are 9 yards or shorter. So he's not pushing the ball down the field much.
But let's be real. Like, obviously, that's one of my biggest things is wanting a quarterback that can push the ball down the field and willing to show that. I rate that higher than I think a lot of others do. But let's be 100% real. Is that today's NFL? Like we've seen the
no, it's charts. Not. It's not. But that's because of a bigger overarching principle of the NFL of taking that away. And we'll just. I'll shortly and succinctly address the whole return of the run game thing you mentioned earlier. The return of the run game is directly correlated to the fact that defenses adjusted to the pass game, and you saw a whole generation, and we're still seeing it. A lot of linebackers are coming in the league like this. We're seeing a whole generation of linebackers that were like essentially what safeties used to be, the size safeties used to be. Deion Jones was a linebacker that made good money. I think he's still in the NFL bouncing around, but he made good money, was considered a top-tier linebacker for a little bit with Atlanta. On a good day, Deion Jones was 210 pounds. That is the size that strong safeties used to play at, if not heavier. Linebackers are used to be, in the 2000s, linebackers were 250 plus. But all these guys kind of trimmed up and lined up to, adjust to the pass game. And now NFL offenses have seen this, and the lighter linebackers and lighter defensive linemen, and they're now going, okay, well, now we can power run it. That's what that is, that overarching principle. Just addressing that real quick. Moving to Shedeur Sanders. I can tell you in a couple sentences my thoughts on Shedeur Sanders.
All right. Well, before you release that statement, I do just want to know. I like to give the stats on guys so people have an idea of who we're about to talk about. But Colorado is 2-1. Could very easily be 1-2. Let's be real. Against an FCS team, but does hold a 70.2 completion percentage with 999 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. I don't want to talk about his rushing because the stupid idea that sacks count as negative rushing yards for quarterbacks. He has a lot. Let's just put it that way. He takes a lot of sacks. But he's probably the most controversial quarterback in this class. So now I'll give you the floor to make your 1 to 2 sentence statement of your thoughts on Shedeur Sanders, because I am now very interested to hear
that. Shedeur Sanders, as I say, my job. This isn't my job, but I will give him a draftable grade because that is what the spirit of evaluating things are, and I'm not an NFL GM. However, he's a draftable player. He's not a first-round talent. That's very, very clear to me. He's a day 2 type of talent, and the way things are going with the NFL draft, the trend is there's real no day 2 in quarterback talents anymore. Even if you're a true day 2 talent, either you're taken in the first round or you're going day 3 pretty much. That's the way it's kind of trending. But if I was an NFL GM, I am not drafting Shedeur Sanders. You hear stories of players being taken off of teams' boards for character reasons, etc., injuries, whatever. Shedeur Sanders would not be on my board. His father is a problem. His brother is a problem. He is a problem. I'm not saying he's a bad person or a bad kid, but his personality is a toxic personality that I don't think is gonna work. I don't think a team is gonna want to play for this guy in the NFL. I don't even think the teams want to play for him in college, really, if we're being honest. This guy went out there and threw his lineman under the bus very hard after the Nebraska game.
And then you saw the next press conference, he brought them all out there to stand behind him and Travis Hunter. I guess that's showing a sign.
I did not see that, but that's
the PR team got to him.
Look, when your dad's the head coach of a college football program, you're the starting quarterback, and these are 18 and 22-year-old kids, they don't have a choice. If Deion walks up to Jordan Seaton and says, go stand behind Shedeur in this press conference, he's going to do it. But in the NFL, that shit's not going to fly. No. These linemen are not going to want to play for you. They're not going to like you if you're throwing them under the bus, especially when you're holding onto the ball as long as he holds onto the ball. He's just any talent he has is completely negated by his toxic personality. Yeah. He's not truly a leader, even though the letter is on his jersey. I wouldn't draft Shedeur Sanders, period. He'd be a wreck for your franchise, and he'd be a wreck for your locker room. I'm sorry.
What you're saying is day 2 talent, but undraftable player because you wouldn't want him in your locker room at all.
Pretty much. And it's the same principle with, and just to get ahead of the curve on any potential thoughts of what I just said, it's the same principle of what Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow were in different ways. He's more talented of a quarterback than those 2 players.
Yeah.
But the other stuff that comes with him is just so bad, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I was going to more say Johnny Manziel. Tim Tebow kind of threw for a loop because I was like, he didn't have those kind of attitude issues. But I get what you're saying. I understand the premise of it. The Johnny Manziel thing where it's hard to bring in someone, but it's also semi-hard to pass on talent. I completely understand that. I mean, as just a pure player taking everything else out of it, I like him. I mean, he has a very good, but some of my notes is he has very good, but not an elite arm strength. I mean, he had that one throw against North Dakota State, South Dakota State, whichever that
And he did have a throw against
that
NDSU
was
that
impressive.
looked pretty. It
That
looked
was
great off his hand. It did.
I mean, he got rocked. He stood in there and just delivered a dime like 35 yards downfield. Like you can see the talent. Like he actually goes through progressions. Like you see it, he'll look one way, he'll look the other. Like he knows what he's doing. As a pure talent, that could be schemed up. I don't know. I'm not that smart, but
I'll
okay, yeah,
respond. Go ahead.
you touch on the whole progression thing. But what I'm seeing is he's looking one way, he's looking another way, he's looking for his dump off. Like I see the 1, 2, 3 over and over again in some of these plays, and I do like it. He has some other issues, like I know this just because obviously I'm a baseball player. Like he has that little ball pat before he's about to throw the ball. Like he'll be sitting there, and he'll instead of just going straight up into the pocket and throwing it, he'll little ball pat just in front. And it's like that extra second, half a second is not going to be good. I mean, you do that in high school baseball, you get yelled at, let alone in college football and the NFL. He also doesn't really. He throws from the same arm slot no matter where the ball is, no matter how he has to do it. It's just right here, take a catcher. Right here, out. He's not sitting there like Quinn Ewers is and throwing from the side and throwing around people. He's not going to be like Matthew Stafford. Nothing like that. No look passes. It's just very robotic. It's very consistent, but it's very robotic. And then what you touched on is holding the ball too long. That's like my biggest red flag outside of that's just on the field. Last year, the amount of times I needed him to make a play happen, to make a pass, or I thought maybe he'd get a couple rushing yards or something. I remember one time on, I think it was like Underdog, like his rushing yards was that 0.5. And I was like, sure, I'll try it. They're playing a nobody. And all he would do is just stand there and take a sack and then stand there and take a sack. And I was like, oh, that's over with because, he's not even doing it. And like, there was times where he would run out of the pocket. He would move and he keeps his eyes downfield, which is good, but he'll run out of the pocket and there'll be nothing but green space. And he just stands there and then tries to fire a ball 30 yards downfield. I'm like, bro, like, come on, help yourself out. And it's just, he just is not willing to just take the easy things and use his athleticism because you see it. Like he will run sometimes, and he can do it. He's a little bit more athletic than like a Carson Beck, and I see Carson Beck run way more than he does. So it's like I'm not saying have designed runs, but be willing to run. I mean, Bryce Young, like we've been talking about, he used to run when he needed to run. Like C.J. Stroud, obviously, whenever Ohio State took him off the leash and actually allowed him to use his legs, he does the same thing. Like Shedeur Sanders can do the same thing. It's just he refuses not to, and I don't believe his coaching.
So Shedeur, yeah, he moves his head around and stuff. You can see him kind of go through the progressions. Here's the issue, though, is he skips the first progressions or he'll skip wide open progressions and wait and hold the ball, like you just said, and try to play for the big play. He's a big play hunter. He likes to do kind of what backyard football like Caleb did, hero ball like Caleb did, but he's worse at it than Caleb. Even though, yes, Caleb played on more talented teams, I think we can still definitively say, in a bubble or in a, nutshell, like Caleb was the better backyard football player than Shedeur.
I mean, he's the best backyard football player I think I've seen, like outside of like Mahomes.
Maybe, and I don't know. Manziel is pretty fun. And
okay, yeah.
Manziel
more
was
like
really,
into the college. Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, that's the issue with him is he's trying to play his backyard game, and he's just not elite enough to do that almost. Which sounds harsh, but like you're passing up open progressions or open first reads to try to play for a big play. That's an issue for me, truthfully. That's a genuine issue. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Mean, and just
he's a draftable player, but he's got issues.
No, I'm on board. I don't think I don't want to like start pinpointing franchises too much because I don't really know the ins and outs of them. But there's some I definitely know that toxicness would not work, whether because there's such like a team atmosphere or because there's other toxic players there that'll make it 5 times worse. So it has to be a very niche spot, and there's a lot of things that have to change with him and his crew that's going to be with him.
It's tough. It's tough to think because it's like it's going to take a very, very specific franchise and a very specific owner that's going to be willing to say, okay, we can take this guy. And it's going to be an owner that almost cares more about the bottom line of things than the results on the field in a lot of ways. And that's risky. And that can be an issue at times. Like, this might be a little controversial, but like the team that stands out to me that like would probably the two teams that stand out to me that would probably take him are Vegas. I mean, and I'm not like I think Mark Davis cares about the results on the field, but I think we all know Mark Davis, his dad, that franchise. That's one team, and the other team that I think would take him and ignore the baggage is Cleveland. I think we all know that the Cleveland starting quarterback has his own struggles as a player and is not playing the best. And I think the Haslam family would willingly take Shedeur and love the attention that he would bring to that franchise.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, they drafted Johnny Manziel. They drafted Baker Mayfield, who didn't have, was not nearly as much, but on the field, he showed his red flags. But we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. You told me before the show that you had overall arching thoughts on this 2025 NFL draft. So I'll give you the floor to let me hear what your early thoughts about it.
I think it surpasses almost the 2025 draft. My thought is that I think we're going to see a real lull of hype for a draft. I think this draft is going to come in and people are going to be very kind of down on the overall talent pool of this draft class, even though there's some special players. But I think we're going to see crazy hype for 2026 and 2027 draft classes. 2026, we're getting Arch, most likely, maybe, which is going to be its own thing. But 2027, these current freshmen in college it looks insane. This like genuinely, this is the best. Like I've seen multiple freshmen live up to the hype of being high recruits. Dylan Stewart at South Carolina, Raiola right now for Nebraska. He looks very, very good for a freshman quarterback. DJ Lagway looks really good. Jeremiah Smith.
I was about to say the wide receivers. Brian Williams, Cam Coleman.
Williams from Bama. Like you're looking at multiple guys at very high profile positions that are playing very, very good as freshmen. I understand there's still a lot of time left and these guys can, things can happen. But dear Lord, if Dylan Raiola and DJ Lagway and Jeremiah Smith and Anderson and Dylan Stewart, if they all just stay, those five guys, if they all just stay at this level that they're currently at and play consistent, you're looking at 2 franchise quarterbacks, 2 franchise wide receivers, and a franchise edge rusher in one draft class that will get so much hype for so many reasons. And it's very exciting.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I'm just taking a look at some possible people. I mean, Jackson Arnold hasn't played the best, but he was a top quarterback coming out. He can always improve.
We'll see. Sand was apparently really good in Ohio State's camp. There's a lot of people that were saying he actually was better than Howard. They just wanted to wait.
I can see that. And then obviously Nico, Tennessee. I mean, they haven't played anymore. I have my thoughts on Tennessee
Nico
separately.
Would be with Manning, wouldn't he? So
yeah, he could be in 2026. Yeah.
So Nico's looked crazy good too. Yeah.
So do you think teams are gonna kind of suck? Teams that need quarterbacks right now are going into 2025. Are they gonna be willing to just kick it along for a year or two and hope to get a Nico, an Arch? Just saying.
I truthfully think that's what they should do. I think Carolina and the Giants are the two that stand out the most.
Well, that's what I wanted to touch on because they're gonna. I mean, kick the tire, kick it down the road for 2 or 3 years potentially, and just kind of bite the bullet for those years and just purposely be bad in the sense, tank.
Yeah, I think they should. I think both of those teams should look at the bridge quarterback option, like the second round quarterback type option. I'm trying to think of recent examples. I mean, Jimmy Clausen's a very popular, easy one off the top of her head. Malik Willis happened to him as well. Who else? There's Davis Mills, kind of. Well, yeah, like
kind of.
I think those franchises should, kind of look at these quarterbacks coming in 2025 at like the second, third round, and say, well, okay, if someone hits, great. If not, there's not a lot of investment there.
Don't tie yourself to a first round quarterback just for a year or two to get the opportunity to draft an even better first round quarterback, and then you're at that crossroads where it's like, do I just ditch this guy we already have, or it's for a new guy, or do I skip those guys?
Yeah, and so looking at like the second, third round type area for quarterbacks is coming draft class, and then looking at like I still think Jameis Winston is worthy of a look. I'm being serious though. Like,
no, I
as
agree.
A bridge quarterback, like I think Jameis Winston could be a very viable bridge quarterback in the NFL still.
I think what you're saying right now is build your team kind of like Seattle is currently with Geno Smith, but they're doing it too early potentially. Like
Geno's playing like a top 5 quarterback right now.
I mean, he's playing good, but like obviously in a year or two he's not going to be there, and that's when they would want one of these guys to step right in, and they're going to have to start looking at that coming up, and whether that's trading up or getting him out to put in Sam Howell and just trying to hope he sucks for a year to get in position to draft one of these guys. It's going to be an interesting thing to see, because we're going to see a lot of taking, a lot of teams pissed off that other teams are purposely throwing games, or not purposely throwing games, because again, I don't believe players or coaches will ever purposely throw a game. If they do, they should be kicked out. But owners will purposely throw games by rostering the worst talent possible.
Yeah, yes, you're definitely right. But I think Jameis, Gardner Minshew, I think there's a chance like we would see Zach Wilson get like retread. Bryce Young might get retread. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson still may jump around. I won't be surprised if Daniel Jones gets retread on another franchise.
If it's only for a year or two, over like 2025 or 26, it's like, Kirk Cousins could do it.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is another guy too. Like,
assuming we move on from him, like we think we will.
Yeah, because I mean, Penix will eventually get the chance there, and so Derek Carr too. Like Derek Carr is probably going to get tossed around eventually. Like I can't imagine he's going to stay in New Orleans for 5 more years.
I hope he does. Personally, I don't want to see Nico Arch down it. I mean, the Saints are going to do anything they can to get Arch. Like I can already see it.
Probably. But like Mac Jones will still be out there. Kenny Pickett will still be out. I mean, Kenny Pickett probably sucks still, but Trey Lance, like there's a lot of Hendon Hooker's going to get I think Hendon Hooker will get a shot somewhere eventually, not necessarily over Jared Goff. I think but
he played well. He played well in preseason.
Yeah, so there's all these guys that are like kind of hanging around out there that aren't necessarily worth a retread, but like I would rather bridge myself with them and aim for Arch, Nico, Raiola, Lagway than settle for Beck, Ewers, Shedeur. The only guy right now that
current state Jackson Arnold, I'll say that too. Like even he sucked. I don't even know who else would be coming out. I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks obviously coming out. So you have Cam Ward, who I actually
Cam Ward actually is the two guys that like may actually transcend this conversation are Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe. Cam Ward, I think, has a shot because I think Cam Ward's actually like got tools. I think people are going to want to buy into Jalen Milroe, and I don't think Jalen Milroe is ever going to have the mechanics to make it work. It sounds terrible, but like I think he's going to be way better off just moving a tight end or a wide receiver or running back or something. But like,
I mean,
he's that athletic freak that people are going to want to buy into in this draft class.
the Eagles are just going to draft him in the second or third and make him the heir apparent to Jalen Hurts. I mean, he'd be elite at the tush push, so might as well, right? That's all Jalen Hurts can do. I'm just kidding. But I have my other thoughts on that. But we can touch on that a little bit later. But overall, yes, I agree. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see over the next year or two what teams do at the quarterback position because everyone knows what's coming down the pipeline. And like you said, there's other positions too. It's not just quarterback. But obviously, quarterback's just the most important position because Dylan Stewart, wow. Wow, that's all I got to say. That's like freshman year, like Will Anderson type stuff I'm seeing out of him, and that just
Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett.
Well, and Myles Garrett too. Yeah, I just meant like the explosiveness and that's meant the explosiveness and just like the game wreckage that he's been doing. But it was good. It was good to be back to talk ball with you guys. I mean, we text all the time in our group chat as well, but I mean, we never really sat there and just been able to throw it back and forth and see what each other are thinking. And I do want to say before I forget that Cam Ward's actually really high on my list right now as it sits currently. He's higher than Shedeur Sanders. I can say that for a fact, and I think he might be higher than Quinn Ewers.
He would be high. I don't even have to think about it and say he's higher than Shedeur Sanders for me.
I know that for you, but he's he's up there with Carson Beck right now for me. And
how much I hate. I hate so much. Is it bad how much I dislike Shedeur Sanders and that family?
You're not the only. You're not the only. You're not the only one. Trust me, I've seen it all the time. But I do look forward to continuing these talks, in preparation for the NFL draft, but also just, going over things that are happening in today's game, whether it's college or the professional level. But thank you all so much for tuning back in. Buckle up because we're going to get right back at this now that we both have life a little bit more settled. Still chaotic, but a little bit more settled now. So go ahead and give us a follow on all social media accounts at Empirical_Scout. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button below. Leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on these guys because we love hearing other people's opinions and we love a little back and forth between opinions because we're very steadfast in ours. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give your boys a 5-star rating. Just help us grow. We like doing this. We love doing this. We love talking. So if you love listening to us, go ahead and give us that 5-star rating. And for Taylor, I'm Taylor, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
1, 2.